You are about to enter the final hours of a leader who ruled with fear, survived wars, fought sanctions, and controlled a nation through force. The last days of Saddam Hussein show you how power collapses when the walls around it fall. You are watching HEH TV. You get direct facts, sharp reporting, and clear storytelling about the events that shaped the world. Saddam Hussein spent his last days inside a system that had fully broken around him. His regime collapsed in 2003 when U.S. forces entered Baghdad and his government lost control of ministries, bases, and communication lines. He escaped the city and moved through rural areas near Tikrit. He believed he could rebuild a network of loyalists. He understood the tribal structure of the region. He trusted the idea that old alliances could protect him. He stayed in safe houses. He hid in abandoned farms. He traveled at night to avoid surveillance. His movements stayed unpredictable. He met former bodyguards and trusted relatives. He carried cash to pay for food and transport because he had no access to state funds. He avoided phones because he knew the U.S. military monitored every signal. Soldiers searched villages around Tikrit daily. They interviewed locals. They detained people who had contact with former government officials. They compared intelligence reports with physical evidence from raids. They looked for any sign of the former president. Saddam knew the danger. He changed locations often. He slept in simple rooms. He ate basic meals. His personal world shrank to a small circle of people and a narrow zone of survival. U.S. forces expanded the search. They used informants. They offered rewards. They analyzed tribal networks connected to the Hussein family. They tracked anyone who received unexplained money. They watched patterns of movement. After months of searching, intelligence pointed toward a farm outside Ad-Dor. Soldiers raided the area in December 2003, found a small underground space hidden under dirt and boards. Saddam was inside this hole when they captured him. He offered no resistance. He had no weapons in his hands. His appearance shocked viewers when images reached international media. His capture ended the first phase of the post-invasion period. It removed the most visible symbol of the old regime. It also created pressure to establish a legal process. Iraq needed a trial. The world demanded documentation of crimes committed under his rule. US's forces held Saddam at Camp Cropper. Guards monitored him constantly. He read the Quran. He wrote notes during the day. He talked to interrogators. He denied responsibility for many actions. He blamed subordinates for certain events. He defended other actions as necessary for national stability. Doctors examined him regularly. His health remained stable. He received simple meals. His routines became structured around questioning sessions and legal preparation. He asked for news about his daughters. He asked about his sons even though he knew they were killed earlier in a U.S. strike. He continued to insist that history would judge him differently than the world judged him in the present. Interrogators described him as confident and sometimes calm. He explained his decisions as logical and tied to survival. He never admitted guilt for the repression of political rivals. He viewed his leadership as a requirement for a divided country. Iraqi authorities took control of his trial once the interim government formed. The court charged him for the Do-Jail case. This case involved the killing of more than 100 people after an assassination attempt against Saddam in 1982. Trial took place in Baghdad inside a heavily protected courtroom. Judges, lawyers, and witnesses faced constant threats. Armed guards filled every hallway. Car bombs exploded regularly in the city during this period because violence increased throughout Iraq. Saddam entered the courtroom, guarded by Iraqi security forces. He refused to recognize the authority of the court. He interrupted proceedings. He argued with judges. His lawyers faced challenges because the environment was unstable. Some defense attorneys were killed. Others fled the country. The trial continued despite these risks. Witnesses described arrests, torture, and executions. Documents linked Saddam to the chain of orders. The court focused on accountability and evidence. The world watched every session on television. Inside his cell, Saddam prepared for the outcome he expected. He wrote letters. He met his legal team. He kept a steady routine. Guards noted that he remained composed. He asked questions about the charges, but rarely showed emotion about their impact. He studied the Quran daily. He maintained a strict personal schedule. His final days approached when the court sentenced him to death in 2006. Appeals moved fast because the Iraqi government wanted a conclusion. Violence increased in Baghdad as sectarian tensions rose. Leaders believed that delaying the sentence would create more unrest. They chose to carry out the execution quickly once the final ruling was complete. Saddam spent his last night meeting with Iraqi officials and religious figures. They asked whether he wanted to send messages to his family. He delivered short statements. He insisted that he had served Iraq. He did not express regret for his actions. He prayed. Guards described him as steady. He refused sedatives. He walked without assistance. Early in the morning on December 30th, 2006, officials escorted him to the execution chamber. The room was small with concrete walls and basic lighting. The government recorded the process with security cameras. He stood on the platform. Witnesses surrounded him. They read the sentence. He spoke brief words. He rejected accusations. He repeated a religious phrase. Officials placed the rope around his neck. He fell when they released the platform. Doctors confirmed his death. His body was taken to Tikrit for burial. Family members received it under strict security. The funeral took place quickly due to the unstable environment. Iraq reacted in different ways. Some communities celebrated. Some mourned. Some feared the consequences. Violence increased in the weeks after his death because sectarian groups treated the event as a symbol of shifting power. International governments responded with statements about justice and stability. Human rights groups debated the fairness of the trial. Legal experts discussed evidence and process. The execution closed one chapter of Iraq's history. It did not solve the deeper tensions left by decades of dictatorship, sanctions, war, and invasion. The country faced new conflicts. Militias expanded. Bombings continued. The government struggled to gain authority across the entire nation. Saddam's last days show how absolute power can collapse into isolation. They show how a leader who controlled a nation for decades can lose everything when the political ground shifts. They show how war reshapes institutions and exposes the structure of a regime that depended on force and loyalty. His final period reveals how a government without public trust cannot survive the pressure of invasion, internal division, and global scrutiny. His story also shows how legal systems attempt to build accountability after long periods of violence. It shows how difficult it is to manage justice in an unstable country. The trial and execution remain part of Iraq's modern identity because they marked the end of an era that shaped the region. Saddam's fall also explains the environment that followed. His removal created power vacuums. Armed groups filled those spaces. New political parties fought for influence. The Iraqi state tried to reorganize institutions that had been shaped by decades of authoritarian control. The last days of Saddam Hussein reveal the cost of leadership built on fear. They reveal the impact of war on a nation already weakened by sanctions and internal division. They also reveal how the final moments of a dictator can influence the future of a country long after the execution. This story continues to shape discussions about Iraq, the Middle East, and global politics. It remains a window into the final collapse of one of the most controversial leaders of the modern era.